Everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Lewis Mosley, who is an executive VP for the UK and Europe for Palantir, has an interview with Bloomberg today, which I suspect is to continue building their media presence in the UK while they continue to vie for that NHS contract. We get some great answers in my own opinion and look at what insiders kind of think about, or at least can publicly say they think about, on the progress of the huge contract and of course NATO and the whole region. But in addition to that, there are lots of comments on the geopolitical status of Europe and how that will benefit Palantir hopefully with increased defense spending. So I'll give my thoughts after, but the interview was about why Palantir chose the UK for their AI Europe headquarter. He gives three main reasons. That first, the skills and talent in the UK is strong in comparison around the world in the AI space, with him saying they're the second best outside of the United States. Second, their approach to AI regulation, which is new to me, is promising, and Palantir believes this will be in their favor, considering Rishi Sunak, as of recent, has been trying to revitalize technology and attracting companies to visit there. And three, Palantir has already been there for over a decade with around 1,000 employees in the UK, so naturally Palantir has already a strong presence there. It's just when you're headquartered and founded in the US, people assume you're just another Silicon Valley tech company coming to steal your data, which isn't accurate at all when it comes to Palantir. Then they hit him with the big question though around the NHS and patient data privacy. He essentially says what all of us Palantir investors already know about them. So it's basically for people who haven't heard about them or don't know anything. Palantir doesn't monetize or collect the data itself. Their software processes data to ensure that the entity who's using them or working with them can actually fully control their data and still use Palantir correctly to actually understand their business and operations to improve. The ownership of data, risk of data, all that stuff is on the person who's running their business. They do try to get some clues on his thoughts, though, on if they'll win the NHS contract, but he rightly so declines to answer that question. It's still an open contract, so any comment here can jeopardize Palantir's chance of winning or delay it. I'm sure they'd also want to avoid this whole question too because of the whole public debate thing that happened a few months back, where they said they were going to do it, but then they had to back out immediately. This is an open process here, so any public debates actually are bad in this situation because it can be used to manipulate public opinion on either direction, of course. Whereas the process is trying to find the best solution that actually works, not the most liked solution, when people can just pressure political opponents or pressure their own political party to choose something just because they like it, not necessarily because it works or they have hard data or use cases. So instead, they hit him with the controversies around the NHS deal, like Peter Thiel's Stockholm Syndrome comments, and trying to buy their way inside those emails that were leaked. So he basically deflects this and lists a bunch of achievements with the NHS. Then they move on to AI and national security then. And they speak about how the UK is taking a lead and finding that balance between safety and experimentation. So the direction of the UK government is keeping it broad to allow exploration. So this is the second point here on regulation of AI. But they all want to do this while maintaining some safety aspect here or guardrails. So they're letting individual industries and their specific domain, like healthcare has its own and finance has its own kind of regulating body. So they're leaving it up to those individual bodies of regulation instead of a sweeping AI regulation across the board that can kill any innovation or make it much more difficult because each industry has its own kind of way of solving its problems, and you don't necessarily want to put a whole blanket statement on how you can use AI. So they move on to defense with Ukraine and how Palantir has been pivotal in their defense. So nothing new here, just that they should focus on the transport and energy infrastructure once they're at a point to rebuild their economy and have that whole reconstruction process starting. So we'll just have to see how that turns out because there's assumptions that the war will continue for a while. And then the rest are just probing questions, in my opinion. But one really important one, though, they did was on defense and NATO and asking if they're directly working with the treaty as a whole. So this is very different from working with individual countries who are under the treaty. So Lewis basically does the political answer, not really answering it, but says they're being tapped on the shoulder there by NATO, or at least countries there. So we're going to see if more partnerships or allies or things of that nature. So overall, I think it's a good interview where it's mostly good public relations and improving their image and reputation in the UK. We didn't get too much new information, but for something that's newish, at least for me, and eye-opening stuff, I'd say is the public opinion for the UK. It's good for them to get more exposure to Palantir and the insight. And I'm glad they touched on the three reasons for the UK headquarters as well. Because the third reason I think really resonates with people saying they have 1,000 employees already in the UK, have been there for a decade. And so these are UK citizens, right? And this should help bring some ease educating the public that they've been there for a while and that they're an allied nation and that Palantir is there to help them. And for the second reason, we didn't know much about the regulation aspect here. It's just that they're saying it's a good regulation environment for AI. But we did get some ideas now that at least we know that it's not going to be sweeping regulations as of talks now, so we can't really guarantee that. And they want to keep it at an individual industrial level. So if you're going to do it in healthcare, you just got to worry about the healthcare people. If you do finance and defense, anything, pharmaceuticals, anything of that nature. So I think of it like the US kind of. So instead of like a statewide or federal-wide regulation on AI for everything, it'd be like working with the FDA, for example, for food and drugs. So you're working with that specific body, and that hopefully makes it less complicated, at least for a software like Palantir, where you're able to build out your different solutions to your industry-specific stuff. And lastly, just getting more confirmation on NATO and Palantir's relationship with them continues to give me confidence that they're going to be a winner over time geopolitically in the region. Now, the amount of revenue and how fast that's going to be and the timelines for that, we have no idea, honestly. But we know that Europe as a whole is trying to increase their defense spending because of the war in Ukraine. So with all that uncertainty there, I wouldn't be surprised to see more contracts over time go to Palantir, at least on the defense space abroad. So like I said, this should help continue their presence in the UK and slowly get them closer to the NHS contract. This interview, I think, was very good PR-wise. But let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video.